Welcome back. This is part 26 of Kin in Line. I'm in the army, still in Kimberley, in the media center, and this is where I churned this thing out, which is quite a bizarre image, really, suggesting what has become now spoken about transhumanism. People are fearful that digital technology is going to take over humankind. So I hadn't even seen a printer. The things we used since the late 80s, they've become more and more common. I mean, printers today aren't even like what they were in the 80s. But here I've got this figure printing out stuff from his chest. It's quite interesting little thing. Definitely a sci-fi feel about it. All these things from the imagination, but they help me to keep working on describing form using lines. The human figure, it was all a bit of fun. And then my weird, I suppose one owes a debt to Picasso, who consciously put eyes on the side of heads and all sorts of things. But, I did this probably out of the subconscious, so it just came naturally. Here again, it just emerged from the subconscious. That nice lacquer big chest. And then kind of spaceships emerging out of his head. Just flying saucers, sorry. And so I was still in the media center, and there was a guy who quite often got a bit drunk, and I must have done this kind of caricature or cartoon drawing of him. He's got everything: the drink, the cigarette, the stumbling gait. But that's the army, eh? And as I said, you can always pick up a figure and faces in an abstract. And I see a kind of a pregnant woman here. There's plenty going on. The subject matter sort of came very freely in this period. I mean, it was probably because I had nothing much to do. So I just let the old imagination run away with me. I know Picasso loved his bulls and bullfights and stuff. So this was my answer, I guess, to it. A stylized bull charging along. And picture like this takes you out of your the environment in which you were in, and that was the military. So here I was in some sort of Escher-like city, and it looks like there's a little door in the moon. I think this would have been inspired perhaps by the Lord of the Rings and the Ents, although this would have been drawn long before the movie came out and we saw how they created those walking trees. but this certainly looks tree-like. I've taken to a lot of quotations from my rock music heritage, and Harlequin laughter, love wings spread. So there was a wonderful album called Astra by Freedom's Children, and that was a line from that South African group with Ramsey McKay was the songwriter. Brilliant album. And yeah, this is a Harlequin, I guess. And being 800 k's away from the sea, I had to keep my memories of the waves alive. And here we've got a little guy with a moustache written on his upper lip. I quite often have done these sort of human-faced or human-headed animals. Look at these legs, all distorted and contorted. But yeah, that I grew up with waves pushing through at Bonza Bay, and you'd have to power your way through about 6 rows of surf before you got out beyond the waves. And gluttony, that's probably what this symbolizes. There's a lovely big cake waiting to be eaten, tiny little chair, weird face on the wall, and then this creature. Sure. The political winds of change were not yet really blowing through South Africa, but this guy he can see the wind coming out of the parliament there. South African flag, the old South African flag. And a wind of change blowing out, and this guy looks a little bit wary of what might happen in the near future. So there were 2 guys in the media center. They were clearly gay and nobody cared a damn. They hung out all the time. They were in another sort of department to us. And one of them wrote these songs in very neat print. Some kind of wonderful Apache loco breath. So I attached them to a radio that he was holding, because he always had a radio. And he was short and dumpy, and his friend was tall and thin. So I just did this kind of cartoon sketch of them. And yeah, Vikings. I mean, who's not interested in Vikings and longboats and stuff? So this was probably just an attempt at a Viking. I think, what is the tennis player's name? Bjorn Borg, might have been the model for this figure in the background. And it looks as though we're still in Viking mode here. Interestingly, I can't really remember doing this one. Excuse me. So there's the longboat heading off towards a sun with a kind of a cross for a face. Maybe this has something to do with Christianity versus pagan religions, so-called. Yeah, a house with a cloud-like tree and similar clouds above. Again, just an exercise in drawing, shading. Why not? And because I think all art is mainly actually just exercises in art. You don't want to take yourself too seriously, especially if you want to keep the thing interesting and alive, not a dead sort of monument to art. Here we have a horse seems to have inspired this semi-abstract. Just the head of a horse or some sort of long build. Maybe it's a crocodile, a Nile crocodile, or the South American version, whatever they are. This one I don't recall seeing for donkey's years. So it's like a head devouring a landscape. Poppies. And he's got a poppy kind of growing off his head. Oh. Okay, so while I was in the sick bay, as I mentioned earlier, with shingles in December 1980, I also, apart from drawing the people around me, I did these abstracts, and there's a little face in there. Another one up there. So I'll just go through these quite quickly because we're running out of time. There was a fan nearby, so I think I incorporated that fan into this. John Lennon, I heard that he had been murdered while I was there in the sick bay. And this is possibly the start of my thinking along the lines of a tribute to him. Then this would have been my final sort of grieving people and a body sort of fallen and contorted after he was shot. So unfortunately that is Lennon, one of the great heroes of our youth. I may have to call it for now, but till next time, cheers.